The slap came so fast I didn't have time to react. My glasses went flying, shattering on the elegant ballroom floor as 130 guests watched in absolute silence. My cheek burned, but the pain in my chest was far worse. My daughter-in-law, Juliet, had just slapped me on her wedding day because I refused to hand over the keys to my apartment. "That's what you get for being so selfish," she screamed in front of everyone. "A woman your age doesn't need so much space." The silence was deafening. No one moved to help me as I crouched down, trembling, to pick up my broken glasses. Some guests looked away, others whispered, but no one dared to defend me. My son Ethan stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor. "You're not welcome here anymore," Juliet continued, smoothing her pristine gown. "Ethan and I need our privacy to start our new life. Your apartment would be perfect for us while we shop for something better." Her words were pure venom. For months, I had endured her condescending comments about my worn-out clothes, my old car, and my simple life. But this had crossed a line. I rose slowly, feeling all eyes on me like sharp daggers. Tears streamed down my face, but inside something had changed forever. That slap wasn't just a physical blow, it was the final straw. For years, I had kept a low profile, living with humility and discretion. I had secrets no one, not even my son, knew. As I walked toward the exit, memories of the last few months began to bombard my mind. I remembered when Juliet first saw my apartment 2 years ago. Her face fell when she saw my modest home. "Seriously? This is where Ethan's mom lives?" she had asked him, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. From that moment on, every visit had been a silent torture. "Aura, you should move to a smaller place," she told me 3 months ago. "At your age, you can't maintain such a big apartment. Beside entertain. As Ethan and I are thinking of having kids soon, we'll need more space." Her fake smile didn't fool anyone but my son, who seemed to lose his personality whenever she spoke, acting like a puppet on a string. The humiliations escalated gradually. First, it was comments about my clothes, then my old car, and then my part-time job at the local flower shop. Each phrase was a small poison dagger stabbing at my self-esteem. My name is Aurora Hughes. I am 68 years old, and all my life I have preferred discretion over ostentation. I work at a small flower shop, drive a 10-year-old car, and buy my clothes at discount stores. To the outside world, especially to Juliet, I am just a middle-class widow on a fixed income, but that's exactly the image I have carefully cultivated for decades. What none of those people looking at me with pity knew was that my life had been completely different before my husband passed. My husband, Robert, had not been the office worker everyone believed. We had made a conscious decision to live modestly, to keep our true wealth a secret, to protect our family's privacy in a way that I now understood had been prophetic. As I walked out of the ballroom, the guests' conversations followed me like a toxic cloud. "Poor thing, she looks so fragile," whispered Juliet's aunt. "She should be in a retirement home, not living alone," another guest commented. Each word was like acid pouring on open wounds. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my cell phone in my worn black purse. A purse I had used for 5 years, not because I couldn't afford a new one, but because I had learned to value practicality over appearances, something my daughter-in-law would never understand. I dialed a number I knew by heart, a number I hadn't used in over a year. "Carlos, it's Aurora. I need you to come to the Royal Oaks Ballroom immediately. Bring the documents you know about. It's time for them to know the truth." My voice trembled, but there was a firmness in it I hadn't felt in a long time. "Are you sure, Mrs. Hughes? Once we do this, there's no turning back?" Carlos asked. I glanced back at the ballroom one last time, where I could see Juliet laughing and Ethan smiling weakly, showing not a single ounce of remorse. "Completely sure," I replied. 30 minutes, Carlos. No more." I hung up the phone and walked toward my car with determined steps. For the first time in years, I was going to drop the mask. They were going to meet the real Aurora Hughes, and when that happened, they would understand the true meaning of regret. The parking lot was quiet, and I sat in my old sedan, waiting for their lives to change forever. While I waited, memories of how I had reached this moment began to flood my mind. It had all started 2.5 years ago when Ethan introduced me to Juliet. From the very first moment, I knew something wasn't right. The way she looked at my apartment, evaluating every corner with thinly veiled disdain, told me everything I needed to know about her intentions. "How cozy," she had murmured as she looked at my second-hand furniture. Her tone suggested the opposite. Ethan, completely blinded by what he believed was love, didn't notice the condescension in her voice. That first dinner was a silent disaster. Juliet barely touched the food I had lovingly prepared. She gave evasive answers about her family, but asked me about my financial situation with alarming curiosity. "And how do you manage on a widow's pension, Aurora? It must be hard to get by on so little money," she said with fake concern. Over the next few months, I began to notice patterns that put me on high alert. Every time they visited, she would make comments about how outdated everything was and how I deserved something better in my golden years. But her eyes always lingered on the details that really mattered: the prime location of the building, the panoramic view from my balcony, and the size of the rooms. One day, while Ethan was in the bathroom, I heard her speaking softly on the phone in my kitchen. "Yes, Mom. His mom's apartment is in a super expensive area. If I can get her to move to a smaller place, we could stay here until we have our own place. She's so naive, she'll probably even thank us for helping her with the transition." Her words cut through me like a knife, but I maintained my composure when she returned to the living room, feigning innocence. From that moment on, every interaction with Juliet became a carefully orchestrated performance on both our parts. She played the concerned daughter-in-law, and I pretended to be the vulnerable old woman who needed guidance. But inside, I was gathering information, observing her moves, and understanding her true motivations. It was like a game of chess, where we both thought we were winning. The following months brought a gradual escalation in her attempts at manipulation. First, there were subtle suggestions about lovely apartments with all-inclusive services. Then came the more direct pressures. "You can't keep living alone at your age. It's dangerous. What if you fall and no one finds out for days?" Each argument was designed to make me feel incompetent and helpless. Ethan, my own son, began to echo the same phrases like a trained parrot. "Mom, Juliet is right. Maybe it would be better for you to consider moving to a more manageable place." Seeing him gradually transform into that woman's puppet was more painful than any direct insult. The son I had raised with so much love now saw me as an obstacle to his happiness. The psychological campaign intensified after they announced their engagement. Juliet had started bringing real estate magazines and brochures for senior communities. But I had been doing my own research. One afternoon, I called an old friend who worked in real estate. "Amelia, I need you to investigate something for me. There's a couple who are very interested in my apartment, and I want to know more about their real financial situation." What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Juliet and Ethan were neck-deep in debt. The wedding they were planning cost more than $50,000, completely financed with credit cards and personal loans. The apartment they were renting was on the verge of eviction for non-payment. The luxury cars they drove were financed with payments they couldn't afford. Their lifestyle was a facade built on suffocating debt. Everything started to make sense. The rush to get married, the insistence that I move, the constant comments about my economic vulnerability. It wasn't love that had united this couple. It was the desperate need to find a solution to their financial problems. My apartment, located in one of the most exclusive areas of the city, was their lifeline. The revelation hit me like a slap to the soul. My son, the boy I had raised with values of honesty and hard work, had chosen the easy path of manipulation and deceit. He had allowed an ambitious woman to convince him to see his own mother as a resource to be exploited instead of a person to be loved and respected. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, their attempts became more aggressive. "Aura, you can't keep being so selfish," Juliet had said to me just 3 days before the ceremony. Ethan and I have sacrificed so much for this marriage. The least you can do is help us with housing." Her words no longer even wore the mask of fake concern. It was a direct demand disguised as a family favor. That night, I had made a decision that would change everything. I called Carlos, my financial advisor, and the only man I had completely trusted since my husband Robert's death. "Carlos, I need you to prepare some documents. It's possible I'll very soon have to reveal information I've kept secret for years." His voice had become serious immediately. "Mrs. Hughes, are you sure this is the right time?" He had warned me with the wisdom of someone who had handled my affairs for more than a decade. "Once this information is public, you can't take it back. The consequences could be devastating for family relationships." But I had already made up my mind. The family I had tried to protect with my silence had chosen to betray me. And now, sitting in my car in the ballroom parking lot, waiting for Carlos to arrive, I realized the moment of truth had come. 25 more minutes, and Juliet, Ethan, and all those guests who had looked at me with pity would discover who Aurora Hughes really was. 25 more minutes, and their perfect worlds, built on lies and greed, would crumble like sandcastles. The night breeze rustled the tree leaves, and it was strangely poetic that on such a beautiful night, any illusions were about to die forever. 20 minutes had passed since my call to Carlos, and every second felt like an eternity. I closed my eyes and let the most painful memories of the last few months flood my mind. I needed to remember exactly why I had reached this point of no return. The biggest humiliation had happened just 2 weeks before the wedding, during what Juliet had called an important family meeting. She had arrived at my apartment, accompanied not only by Ethan, but also by her parents. A perfectly planned ambush. "Aurora, we want to talk to you about your future," Juliet's mother, an haughty woman who looked at me as if I were a bothersome insect, had begun. "We believe it's time for you to make responsible decisions about your life," continued Juliet's father. "At your age, living alone in such a big place is not only unnecessary, but dangerous. What if you have a medical emergency and no one finds out for days?" Their words were rehearsed, too perfect to be spontaneous. Ethan had remained silent throughout the conversation, nodding occasionally like a well-trained puppet. Seeing him there, sitting next to a family that treated me like an obstacle, was like watching the son I had raised die before my eyes. "Mom," he finally said in a voice I no longer recognized, "they're right. Juliet and I have been talking, and we think it would be better for everyone if you moved to a place more appropriate for your age." "Appropriate for my age," I repeated, feeling the anger begin to boil inside me. "And who gets to decide what's appropriate for me? You?" Juliet's mother exchanged a knowing look with her husband, as if my words confirmed something they had already discussed. "Aurora, we understand this can be difficult to accept, but you must think about what's best for Ethan and Juliet," she said. "What's best for them?" I murmured, beginning to understand the true dimension of the conspiracy that had been woven behind my back. "And I suppose my apartment would be perfect for them to start their married life, right?" The awkward silence that followed my question was all the answer I needed. They had planned every detail of this conversation. In every argument, every psychological pressure, Juliet then took control, deploying her full arsenal of emotional manipulation. "Aurora, it's not just about the apartment, it's about your well-being. We've been doing research, and we found a wonderful residence for people your age." She listed the amenities: 24-hour medical services, social activities, and prepared meals. "You could make friends with people who understand what you're going through." Her fake smile made me nauseous. "What I'm going through?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Well, loneliness, financial uncertainty, the fear of not being able to take care of yourself. It's normal at your age, Aurora. You don't have to be ashamed of needing help." The audacity of this 28-year-old woman telling me what was normal at my age left me speechless. But then I saw something in her eyes that chilled me, the absolute certainty that she had a right to my life, my home, and my decisions. To her, I was no longer a person with autonomy, but an obstacle to be removed with as little resistance as possible. "We've run the numbers," Juliet's father continued, pulling out a folder they had clearly prepared in advance. "The cost of the residence would be approximately $2,500 a month. With the sale of your apartment, you'd have enough money to cover it for many years, and there would still be some left over to help Ethan and Juliet with their initial marriage expenses." There it was, the naked, raw truth. It wasn't about my well-being or my safety. It was about money. It was about converting my home into cash to finance their unsustainable lifestyle. "And if I refuse?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "Aurora," Ethan said, his voice sounding rehearsed, "we hope it won't be necessary to take more drastic measures. But if your mental health deteriorates to the point that you can't make rational decisions..." The implicit threat was crystal clear. If I didn't cooperate voluntarily, they would seek legal ways to declare me incompetent. They had done their research. They had planned and prepared the ground to take everything I owned by force if necessary. The son I had raised with so much love was sitting right there, allowing strangers to threaten his own mother. That night, after they left with my firm refusal, I cried for the first time in years. I called Carlos immediately. "I need you to investigate something urgently," I had told him through tears. "I want to know exactly what the real financial situation is for my son and his fiancée. Everything. Debts, income, liabilities, everything." The results of that investigation had been devastating. Ethan earned $45,000 annually, but had debts of more than $80,000 on credit cards. Juliet worked part-time as an image consultant, making maybe $4,000 a year, but spent as if she had an executive salary. Together, they owed more than $120,000, not counting the loans they had taken out for the wedding. The apartment they rent. Ed was 3 months behind on payments. Their lifestyle was a financial freefall, and my apartment represented their only hope of salvation. But there was something else in Carlos's report that had completely broken my heart. For the past 6 months, Ethan had been regularly calling banks and insurance companies asking about loans against his elderly mother's property. He had been asking about legal procedures to obtain financial power of attorney over senior citizens. My own son had been planning my systematic dispossession for months. The most painful information had come at the end of the report. According to a private investigator Carlos had hired, Juliet had been telling her friends that she had sacrificed herself by getting engaged to an older, less attractive man because his mother had valuable properties and no competitive heirs. To her, marrying Ethan wasn't love. It was a strategic investment in my estate. That revelation had been the final straw. I understood that it wasn't about money or desperation. It was about a pure, calculated greed that had corrupted my son until he was unrecognizable. The days leading up to the wedding had been torture. Every phone call from Ethan was a new pressure to reconsider my position. Every visit from Juliet included poisonous comments about my stubbornness and selfishness. They had started to treat me as if I were already a senile old woman whose opinions didn't matter. The night before the wedding, Ethan made his last attempt. "Mom, tomorrow is the most important day of my life. Please don't ruin it by being difficult. Juliet just wants what's best for all of us." His words were the final confirmation that I had lost my son forever. The man who was getting married the next day was no longer the boy I had raised. And now, sitting in my car, I realized that everything had led to this inevitable moment. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about showing them that actions have consequences and that greed has a price. I had tried to protect Ethan from reality for too long, and that protection had corrupted him. 15 more minutes, and everything would change forever. My hands trembled as I dialed the number for Joseph, my neighbor. "Joseph, it's Aurora. I need to ask you for a very important favor," I said, my voice shaking. "Could you go to my apartment and bring me the brown folder from the second drawer of my desk?" "Yes, right now. It's urgent." Joseph had been like a brother to me since Robert passed away, and I knew I could trust him. The folder I had asked for contained documents no one in my family had ever seen: bank certificates, property titles, investment records that Robert and I had kept secret for decades. Documents that proved the poor widow living on a modest pension was actually a woman with enough resources to change lives with a single decision. Minutes later, Joseph appeared in the parking lot with the folder. "Aura, what's going on? You look very upset," he asked. "It has to do with Ethan's wedding," I explained briefly what had happened in the ballroom. "That woman is a viper," he muttered. "Joseph, in a few minutes a man named Carlos will arrive. When you see him, tell him I'm waiting for him here," I asked. "After tonight, many things are going to change. I want you to know you have always been like family to me." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "You're family to me too, Aurora. Do what you have to do." As he left, I opened the folder. The first document was a bank statement with a balance of $5,400,000. The second was the property title for a downtown office building that generated monthly rent of $50,000. The third was the deed to a beach house. Robert had been a genius at investments, starting a small import business and turning it into a silent empire. "Invisible wealth gives you power," he used to say. The apartment Juliet so coveted was actually the least valuable property in my portfolio. I had kept it for the memories it held, but the was something else in that folder that would change everything for Ethan and Juliet. For the last 3 years, I had been secretly paying many of his debts. The credit card payments and even some of the wedding expenses had been made possible by my secret financial support. I had been subsidizing his irresponsible lifestyle for years. The irony was devastating. While they were humiliating me for being an economic burden, I was literally the only reason they could afford that marriage. While they were planning to strip me of my apartment, I had been solving their financial problems in secret for years. I closed the folder and looked toward the ballroom once more. In less than 5 minutes, Carlos would arrive with the final documents I needed. "This is not revenge," I reminded myself. "This is justice." Headlights of a car approached the parking lot. It was Carlos, punctual as always. "Mrs. Hughes," he said, "are you completely sure about this? Once we go in there, there will be no way to undo what is about to happen." "I have never been more sure of something in my life, Carlos," I replied. "It's time for them to meet the real Aurora Hughes." The subsequent 2 years transformed my life. My story became public, leading to a legal battle where I exposed the financial abuse and betrayal by my son and daughter-in-law. My victory wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for all seniors facing similar situations. I channeled my pain into purpose by founding the Aurora Hughes Foundation for the Protection of Seniors, an organization dedicated to helping others who have been exploited by their families. The foundation has become my new family. We handle dozens of new cases each week, all with similar patterns of adult children pressuring their parents for money or property. I use my story not only to raise awareness, but also to educate others on how to recognize the warning signs and seek help. I've become an advocate for new legislation to better protect seniors from family abuse. I appeared on a national television show to tell my story. The host, Catherine, asked me if I had a message for my son, Ethan, if he was watching. I looked directly into the camera and said, "Ethan, if you are listening to this, I want you to know that I still love you. But loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to abuse you. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity for their convenience. The doors to my heart will always be open for you, but only if you can walk through them as the honorable man I tried to raise you to be." I have found peace in knowing that I no longer allow anyone to treat me as if I am disposable. I have learned that the end of a toxic relationship is not a loss. It's a liberation. My life at 70 is richer and more meaningful than it was before. I have proven that it is never too late to write a new chapter in your own story and stand up for yourself. When people ask me if I regret what I did, my answer is always the same: no. I am looking forward to the future, as it is filled with hope and purpose. I'm a testament to the fact that true love is built on respect, and dignity is a currency worth more than all the gold in the world.